Your car started this morning. It'll start tomorrow morning, and the morning after that, until one morning it won't, and neither will anyone else's. Picture a Tuesday morning, your street, every car on it, yours, your neighbor's, the delivery truck at the end of the block, sitting exactly where it was parked the night before, silent, completely permanently silent. Tom's running late, meeting at 9. He grabs his keys, turns the ignition, nothing. Tries again, nothing. Battery indicator? Fine. Fuel gauge? Full. Across the street, Sarah's having the same problem. Down the block, someone's yelling into a phone. 2 houses over, a man stands next to his open car door, key in hand, confusion spreading across his face. Nobody understands, not yet. No warning light, no error code, no mechanic who can fix it, just a $40,000 piece of metal that will never move under its own power again. This isn't a fuel problem, it isn't a battery problem, it isn't anything a tow truck or a dealership can solve. What disabled your car happened 93 million miles away, and it took 8 minutes to arrive. We are currently living through what solar scientists call solar maximum, the peak of the sun's 11-year activity cycle. This one is behaving differently. Satellite data from NOAA and the European Space Agency recorded more X-class solar flares in the past 18 months than in the previous 5 years combined. X-class, the highest tier on the scale, the ones that make scientists quietly update their contingency models and say nothing publicly. Most people hear solar storm and think flickering lights, maybe some GPS disruption, northern lights visible further south than usual. Pretty mildly inconvenient, nothing serious. That was true during previous cycles, when the technology at risk was simpler. But something changed. Your car. The car you're driving right now is not the car your parents drove. In 1970, the average vehicle contained 0 microprocessors. Engine timing was mechanical, fuel delivery was mechanical, ignition was mechanical. A geomagnetic disturbance could pass through a 1970 Ford and leave it completely unaffected because there was nothing electronic to damage. Today's average vehicle contains between 50 and 150 separate electronic control units. Microprocessors managing everything from fuel injection to transmission shifts to anti-lock brakes. Any one of them fails, your car becomes a $40,000 paperweight. When a significant solar flare reaches Earth, it doesn't just affect satellites and power grids. It induces electrical current directly into conductive materials, including the wiring harness running through your vehicle. Your car's electrical system is essentially a collection of antennas, long runs of wire, connected to sensitive electronic components running throughout the entire vehicle. A geomagnetic surge doesn't care about design tolerances. It induces current the system was never designed to handle, and nanometer-scale semiconductor architecture, when hit with voltage it wasn't designed for, doesn't malfunction, it doesn't glitch, it doesn't need a reset, it fails, permanently, at the molecular level. The surge travels through the wire, silent, invisible, faster than any circuit breaker can respond. Inside the ECU, nanometer-scale junctions overheat, silicon structure breaks down. Not with smoke, not with sparks, just molecular failure happening in microseconds. The car doesn't know it happened, you don't know it happened, until you turn the key the next morning. And here's the detail they're not telling you. A powered-down vehicle is not protected. The wiring harness is still present. The ECUs are still connected. The antenna effect doesn't require the ignition to be on. Off doesn't mean safe. Park doesn't mean protected. There is no software fix for a failed logic gate. There is no reset button for fused silicon. When your check engine light comes on under normal circumstances, there's a system, diagnostic tools, mechanics, parts ordered, repair completed. That system works because it assumes failures happen one at a time. A significant geomagnetic event doesn't damage one car. It damages every modern vehicle within the affected region simultaneously. Millions of vehicles, passenger cars, delivery trucks, emergency vehicles, buses, all experiencing the same failure at the same moment. No supply chain on Earth solves that. The mechanic plugs in the diagnostic scanner. The screen stays black. He tries a different tool. Same blank screen. He looks at you. The scanner's not reading anything. Behind you in the lot, 3 more cars with the same issue. His phone rings, then rings again, then doesn't stop. By noon, 20 cars are waiting. By evening, 200. The tools don't work. The parts don't exist. The system isn't built for this. This is what solar scientists mean when they model a Carrington-class event, a geomagnetic storm comparable to the one that struck Earth in 1859. The 1859 Carrington event set telegraph wires ablaze, documented in newspapers from New York to London. The same event today wouldn't set your car on fire. It would simply make it permanently inert. 1859 damaged telegraph wires. 2026 disables millions of cars. The 2026 solar maximum is the first in human history where this specific vulnerability, hundreds of millions of nanometer-scale ECUs exist at this scale. I'm not telling you this to frighten you into doing nothing. There are specific, practical things you can do, things that cost very little and take very little time, that change your position completely. But the solution only makes sense once you understand the problem at the level it actually exists. Before we get there, one question: when was the last time you saw a car made before 1985 on your street? Because right now, those cars represent something the rest of the modern fleet doesn't: complete immunity. Chapter 2. What actually breaks? Let me show you exactly what breaks. Not in general terms, not the electronics fail, which sounds serious and tells you nothing useful. The specific component, the specific failure mechanism, the specific reason why this failure is permanent in a way that a dead battery or a blown fuse simply isn't. Because once you understand what actually happens inside that black box under your hood, the rest of this conversation changes completely. Your ECU is a sealed module, roughly the size of a hardcover book, mounted in the engine bay or behind the dashboard. Picture it open, green circuit board inside, chips smaller than your fingernail, copper traces so thin you can barely see them, everything pristine, everything precise, everything fragile. Inside, microprocessors, memory chips, thousands of components operating at millivolt voltages, all designed to precise tolerances that assume a stable electrical environment. In practice, those tolerances are narrow. Your ECU operates comfortably within a very specific voltage band. Slightly outside that band, it starts making errors. Significantly outside that band, the protection circuitry kicks in and shuts things down to prevent damage. A geomagnetic surge doesn't negotiate with protection circuitry. In practice, those tolerances are narrow. Your ECU operates comfortably within a very specific voltage band. Slightly outside that band, it starts making errors. Significantly outside that band, the protection circuitry kicks in and shuts things down to prevent damage. A geomagnetic surge doesn't negotiate with protection circuitry. The induced current travels through those wires without announcing itself. It doesn't trigger your car's protection systems in time to matter. It arrives at the ECU's input pins faster than any software protection routine can respond. At voltages the nanometer-scale transistors inside simply cannot survive. A transistor at nanometer scale fails when exposed to a voltage spike for the same reason a soap bubble fails when you press it with a finger. The physical structure cannot accommodate the force. The junction fails. No sound. No flash. Silicon. That was a switch becomes a permanent conductor or a permanent gap. The component looks identical from the outside. Function 0%. This is called latch-up failure in semiconductor engineering. Once it occurs, the affected transistor doesn't recover. There is no cycle power, no reset, no software patch. The physical structure of the component has changed at the atomic level. Atomic level damage. No reset fixes atoms. No software patch rewrites physics. The intuition that a powered-down car is safe is completely reasonable and completely wrong. The wiring harness doesn't disappear when you turn off the ignition. The physical antenna is still present. The ECUs are still connected through their input circuits. The induced current from a geomagnetic surge comes from outside the vehicle. It travels through the harness regardless of whether the ignition is on or off. Off doesn't mean safe. It never did. That assumption just hadn't been tested yet. Think about what this means practically. Every car in every parking lot, every car in every garage, every delivery truck parked overnight at a distribution center, every emergency vehicle sitting in a station bay, none of them is protected by simply being turned off. The 1989 Quebec geomagnetic storm, significantly less powerful than a Carrington-class event, knocked out the Hydro-Quebec power grid in 92 seconds. The 1989 vehicle fleet survived because it was substantially more analog than today's. The 2026 fleet won't have that advantage. Modern vehicles have 50 to 150 control modules communicating constantly through the CAN bus, the controller area network. Engine ECU to transmission module, to ABS controller, to stability control, every module sharing data in real time. When a geomagnetic surge induces current through the wiring harness, it doesn't affect just one module. It affects every module connected to the harness simultaneously. The failure isn't one ECU in one car. It's potentially every module in every car in the affected region, all failing in the same moment. Rush hour, 80,000 cars on the freeway, then nothing. Engine stop, no coughing, no sputtering, just immediate silence across 80,000 vehicles simultaneously. Brake lights still glowing from the last moment of power. Drivers turn their keys, nothing. Hazard lights, nothing. Someone leans on the horn, then everyone tries, then silence again because the horns are electronic too. Highways become parking lots, intersections become obstacles, tunnels become impassable, all in the same instant. Light from the sun takes approximately 8 minutes to reach Earth. The electromagnetic pulse from a solar flare travels at the speed of light, which means from the moment a significant flare erupts, you have 8 minutes before the electromagnetic component arrives. 8 minutes is not enough time to receive a warning, process it, and take protective action. But the energetic particles that follow, the ones responsible for the most severe geomagnetic effects, travel more slowly. They arrive anywhere from 15 hours to 3 days after the initial pulse. That is the window that matters most. That is the window where informed action is still possible. The gap between the people who come through this intact and the people who don't is not a gap of resources or expertise. It's a gap of information. There are vehicles that survive this completely intact. There are protective measures that work, and you're closing that gap right now. Stay with it. Chapter 3, the immunity line. Here's the question you should have been asked years ago. Do you know what year your car was manufactured? Not the model year on the title, the actual year the fundamental architecture of your vehicle's electrical system was designed around. Because that number, more than the make, more than the model, more than anything else about your vehicle, determines whether you have a problem or whether you don't. Somewhere around 1986, the automotive industry crossed a threshold. Before that threshold, vehicles relied primarily on mechanical and analog systems. Ignition timing was controlled by a distributor, a purely mechanical device with no semiconductor components. Fuel delivery was carburetor-based, no ECU managing injection timing, no electronic transmission control. After that threshold, the transition to digital control accelerated rapidly. By the mid-1990s, full ECU management was standard. By 2000, the 50-module vehicle was common. By 2010, 100 modules or more. The vehicles built before that threshold, the ones with mechanical distributors and carburetor fuel systems, have essentially zero vulnerability to geomagnetic-induced ECU failure. There is no semiconductor architecture to damage. The engine runs on mechanical timing that a geomagnetic storm cannot touch. This is not nostalgia. This is engineering reality. A 1978 Land Cruiser starts the morning after a Carrington-class event. A 2023 Land Cruiser with 87 control modules does not. Morning after the storm, you walk outside, every car on your street, silent, except one, down the block, engine sound, a 1979 pickup, 45 years old, carbureted, mechanical distributor. The owner backs out of the driveway, drives past 20 disabled cars, the only sound on the entire street, mechanical timing, carburetor fuel, zero semiconductors, complete immunity. That's not a coincidence. Most people do not own a pre-1986 vehicle and are not about to buy one. That's fine, because the solution isn't to abandon modern transportation entirely. It's to understand the vulnerability and work with it intelligently. There are 3 practical layers to this. Each one is achievable. Each one costs less than you think. Layer 1, the Faraday option. A Faraday cage blocks electromagnetic fields. Electromagnetic energy induces current in the outer conductive layer and cannot penetrate inside. For vehicle components, spare ECUs stored inside a Faraday enclosure stay protected during a geomagnetic event. When the event passes, the spares are intact. Replace the failed modules. The vehicle runs. A functional Faraday container requires no specialized equipment, a metal ammunition can with a tight lid and foam lining inside. Components must not touch the metal walls, the foam prevents that. Your primary ECU plus fuel pump control module cover most scenarios. You open the ammo can, metal on metal sound. Inside, foam lining cut to fit. 2 ECUs wrapped in anti-static bags. You close the lid, tight seal, no gaps. Tape the seam, write your vehicle info on top with a Sharpie. Done. $40, complete protection, metal can, foam lining, 2 ECUs, under $50, years of protection. Layer 2, the analog fallback. Late 1980s and early 1990s vehicles occupy a middle ground, some electronics but with mechanical fallback capability. Certain diesel engines use mechanical injection pumps that require no ECU at all. The vehicle loses modern conveniences but retains full mobility. The general principle, ignition and fuel delivery that operates independently of semiconductor control. These vehicles exist. They are increasingly sought after by people who understand this vulnerability. Late 80s diesel, mechanical injection pump, no ECU required. The market knows prices are rising. Layer 3, the 15-hour window. The energetic particle stream that causes the most severe geomagnetic effects travels much more slowly than light. NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center and the European Space Agency's monitoring network can detect a significant particle stream event and provide advance warning measured in hours, not seconds. 15 hours is a realistic minimum warning window for a major particle event. 8 minutes gave you nothing. 15 hours gives you everything, if you already know what to do with it. NOAA alert hits your phone. X-class flare, Earth-directed CME, particle arrival, 14 hours. You move, metal-roofed garage, you back the car in. Check the Faraday can on the shelf, sealed, good. Bicycle by the door, gas cans full, maps on the table, 14 hours, you're ready. Most people are still searching online for what is a solar storm. Even with perfect vehicle protection, you'll operate in an environment where most vehicles have failed, highways blocked, fuel stations without power, supply chains interrupted. Your functional vehicle is an extraordinary asset. It is also potentially noticeable to others in ways worth thinking about. The gray man principle applies here directly. A running vehicle in a landscape of failed ones is visible in a way that requires planning, not just celebrating. Your route, your fuel storage, and your destination need to be decided before the event, not during it. A running vehicle with no clear destination and no fuel reserves solves half the problem and creates a different one. We've covered the threat, the mechanism, and the 3 protective layers. What remains is the specific sequential action list. The things you do in what order, starting today, that move you from exposed to prepared. It's shorter than you think, and less expensive than anything the survival industry will try to sell you. Everything we've covered, the solar maximum, the ECU vulnerability, the logistics collapse means nothing if it stays theoretical. You're not here for a science lecture. You're here because you want to know what to actually do. Here it is, in order, starting today. Step 1. Identify your vehicle's critical modules. This week, look up your specific vehicle's ECU part number. Your owner's manual lists it, and your dealership parts department will give it to you for free. Then identify your fuel pump control module part number using the same process. You open the owner's manual, flip to the back, and there it is. You grab a pen, write it on a note card, and tape it inside the kitchen cabinet. Done. Step 1 complete. You are not buying these today. You are identifying them today. The purchase comes after step 2. These 2 components, the ECU and the fuel pump control module, cover the core failure scenario for most modern vehicles. Together, they typically cost between $150 and $400 for the parts alone, significantly less than 1 month's car payment on most vehicles. Step 2. Build your Faraday container. This weekend, metal ammunition can, available at any military surplus store or large sporting goods retailer, typically $15 to $25. Line the interior with foam or cardboard, any non-conductive material that prevents stored components from touching the metal walls. The insulating layer is not optional. Direct contact between stored electronics and the conductive housing defeats the protection entirely. Test the seal. The lid should close firmly with no gaps. Tape the seam with conductive tape if there is any doubt about seal quality. The ammo can closes with a metallic snap, airtight. You run your finger along the seam, no gaps. You write with the Sharpie. 2019 Honda Accord ECU plus fuel pump. Black ink on green metal, stored on the garage shelf, right there, ready. $40, 2 hours, complete protection. That's the entire investment. Step 3, monitor, free. 5 minutes per week. NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center publishes real-time solar activity data at no cost. Bookmark it and check it weekly during Solar Maximum, which runs through 2026 and into 2027. You are looking for X-class flare activity combined with Earth-directed coronal mass ejections. When both appear together, your 15-hour window may be opening. Most weeks, nothing happens. The 5 minutes cost you nothing. The 1 week it matters. Those 5 minutes are worth more than anything else you did that day. Preparation for a Carrington-class event is not a guarantee of a good outcome. It's a guarantee of a better position than you'd otherwise be in. There's a difference. A fully prepared person with protected vehicle spares, a functional Faraday container, and a monitoring habit still faces an enormously disrupted world. Supply chain failures, infrastructure collapse, the social dynamics of a suddenly immobile society. None of that disappears because your car still runs. What changes is your options. A running vehicle when most vehicles don't run is not a solution to every problem. It is the difference between having choices and not having choices. Between being able to reach your family and not being able to reach them. Between flexibility and being fixed in place. Options aren't safety, they're something better. They're choices when nobody else has any. That's what preparation actually buys. Not safety, options. One thing, just one. Look up your ECU part number. Write it down somewhere you won't lose it. That's the entry point. Everything else follows from that single action, because the moment you have that number, the rest of the preparation has a concrete foundation to build on. The people who navigate major disruptions successfully are rarely the ones who made massive dramatic preparations years in advance. They're the ones who took small, specific, informed actions consistently and who had already done the thinking before the moment arrived that required it. You've done the thinking. You've just spent the last half hour understanding something that most people in your city have never considered. The next 24 hours are yours. Use them. This channel exists for one reason, to give you information that could change your outcome before the moment arrives. Solar storms, infrastructure vulnerabilities, the threats most people don't see until it's too late. If being prepared instead of surprise matters to you, make sure you're here for the next one. The threats don't stop. Neither do we.